It's me, Brianna, and you are listening to Are We Caught Up Yet? Marvel Edition. You can find us on youtube.com/SaveTheGameMedia and podcast services. If you do want to show Save the Game Media some extra love and get early access to all of our content, you can find us on patreon.com/SaveTheGameMedia. Today, I am joined by my co-host and friend, Sam. How are you today, Sam?
Very warm.
Oh. Why don't you turn the AC on?
Ha, 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 ha.
Give Sam a minute. He's having
ha, 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 ha. That's funny because we don't have air conditioning over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had it, today would certainly be one of the days where I would put it on.
Do you remember telling me that you guys don't need AC?
I mean, we don't.
Sounds like you might need it today.
But that's like saying, oh, it might. That's like saying, if we're talking about, say, I don't know, you're walking through the Saharan desert. Is it unheard of that it rains in the desert? No, because it can rain in the desert, but it's very unlikely. So that would be like walking through the Saharan desert and making sure no matter what, you're carrying an umbrella just in case. It's like, well, yeah, there might be 1, maybe 2 days a year that you might actually really need it. But realistically, it is 99.85% of the time completely redundant.
See, but the thing is every year I have known you, you've had to deal with the hot weather with no AC.
Yeah, so for like a few days a year.
Exactly. So for those few days a year, it would be nice to have AC.
Yeah, but that doesn't justify the expenditure of installing and maintaining the AC.
Then just get one of those like the fans that you like pour ice water into.
I mean, I don't know how backwards you think the UK is. We do have access to fans.
I mean,
so
and why is it hot in your room?
Oh yes, because of course, well-known scientific fact that as soon as anybody puts on a fan anywhere, it immediately stops being hot.
That's if you have the right kind of fan, it can cool down your room.
Okay, but again, who said it wasn't cooling down my room?
Listen, I'm just trying to help here, and I'm being attacked.
It being cooled down doesn't prevent it from being hot. Those are not mutually exclusive things. It can be just less hot, which is what it is.
I can't handle the heat. I don't know what to tell you, but there's not much that will make me grumpier than being hot.
It's not great.
So.
It's not great.
That's okay. I have some time to figure out how I'm going to do AC if I do end up moving to the UK. So I got time.
You're straight up just not probably going to be able to find it.
You say that, but money buys a lot of stuff.
And we all know you are loaded.
Flush with cash.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Cool.
Some fun stuff today for you, Sam. Firstly, I just want everybody to know that Anime Podcast is taking over the network. Anime Podcast is taking over Save the Game Media. So if you haven't checked out Anime Podcast, you absolutely should. We said, Kyle and I said, not the episode we recorded yesterday, but the episode we recorded a week ago that just came out this last Friday. We said, if we get 2 more patrons, we will do a post show for Anime Cast. And guess what? We got 2 new patrons. So I said, this is proof we're taking over the network. So it's not going to be Save the Game Media. It's going to be Save the Anime Media.
I hate to like rain on a parade, but again, I'm not really sure that that's connected in the way that you're framing it to be.
It's
I think that
probably,
might just mean that there are 2 listeners that would be interested in a post show.
yeah,
Whether that means
probably.
it's subsuming the entirety of the rest of the network, I'm not certain of that.
Listen. The anime podcast people know what's up. They know we're taking over.
If you say so.
The other thing I had to bring up, we have now, it's official, you guys, made it through all of the clips. Like I have now actually seen in their regular habitat all of the opening clips from our opening song, like intro thing, words.
Yeah.
Moon Knight was the last one, which is, surprise, what we're reviewing today. Actually, if you didn't know that's what we were reviewing, then I guess I have other concerns. But
true.
Nothing. Okay, well, I'm glad that we've got those out of, like, not out of the way, but I'm excited that we finally, like, it feels like we're kind of getting to the caught up portion of the are we caught up yet? You know? We're not caught up
there's still a
yet.
fair amount of road to go, but we're on the we're past the halfway point.
Oh, we're well past the halfway point.
Oh, I wouldn't say well past, but
it feels like we're well past the halfway point.
Well, then you're wrong, I'm afraid.
There's like no more movies after that.
You're also wrong on that front.
Well, that's okay. We'll get caught up at some point. And then once we're caught up, we're going to be super behind on something else. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Have you been watching anything in the past? I think it's been 2 weeks since we recorded the last one.
I'm struggling to think. Oh, I mean, I started the latest season of The Boys, which I'm still enjoying. I think it's it hasn't reached the end of its rope, but I'm glad that the next season that's coming is the final one, that they sort of realize that they have probably, as much as they can, tapped the sort of well that they go back to with the tone and the characters and stuff. But I'm still thoroughly enjoying it. It's still a good laugh, nice and shocking as well. I just appreciate, as much as as immersed as I am in superhero media, to be able to continue to get just a slightly different flavor of it is appreciated. So I watched that, not all of it, 2 episodes.
Okay.
I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine came out, so I saw that in cinemas.
And you enjoyed it?
I did. I loved it. I'm going this Wednesday, 2 days time from day of recording, going again. This time seeing it with my father, because he appreciates the crassness of Deadpool in particular. So he is excited to check it out. So yeah, heartily recommend people watch that. It lived up to expectations, in my opinion.
Okay. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I haven't, obviously I'm not gonna go watch it because I'm like so far behind to even like consider something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I've been watching like a lot of their like interviews, like the main actors interviews, as they're like doing like tours to like promote the movie and stuff. They seem to get along really well, so it seems like it'll be like a good film, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they've been best friends for a decade and a half. Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman. So this was always, well, I was going to say it was always going to happen, but it seemed like if the stars aligned, it was going to happen. If they could make it work, they would do it, and they have, obviously. So, yes, thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay.
What about you?
Have I watched anything? I don't think I've really watched too much. I've watched a bunch of anime. I'm still obsessed with Nokotan. There's so in the opening sequence, Sam, I know you don't care about this, but I'm gonna tell you anyways. In the opening sequence, there is a like a little mini dance that they like that the characters do, and I learned it because I was like, I have to know it. So now I know how to do that. So I feel like there was something that I watched. I watched Elemental again. Really obsessed with that movie. I really, 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 really love that movie. It's an incredible time.
That's the Pixar thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
I haven't seen
so
it.
good. You have or have not?
No.
Oh, you should watch it. I think it's really good.
I heard all right things.
I think it's really cute. I am planning on watching The Boyfriends. If anybody knows what that is, it's like a Japanese dating show. But I haven't seen that yet. That'll probably be what I'm talking about next time. And I watched obviously Moon Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't think I've been really watching much. I started rewatching The Office again. But this time I'm like watching the Office rewatch podcast and then like
Mm-hmm.
watching the episode with the podcast episode. So that way I'm getting, something different out of it. But
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change the fact that I'm still rewatching The Office. So,
Yay.
yeah, exactly. I'm glad you're so enthusiastic about this. You're so supportive, Sam.
Someone has to be.
What does that mean?
Not expanding.
I don't know. Okay, you guys. So again, like I said, we're talking today about Moon Knight season 1. First, as always, we will do general thoughts. Sam refuses to go first at any point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go first.
Yeah.
If we do a different series, you'll have to go first on general thoughts.
Sure.
Does that scare you?
No.
Okay. General thoughts on Moon Knight. I had a really fantastic time with this show. I really, really loved it. I was absolutely blown away by Oscar Isaac's performance. Like, I can't even imagine what it takes to perform two wildly different characters that are also not two wildly different characters at the same time. I just obviously I have almost zero acting experience. So it's it's so far beyond what I could even begin to understand, beyond the oh, this was really incredible. I also am just like a simp for Oscar Isaac. So that's probably a little bit of it. But yeah, no, he's incredibly talented. Um, I don't This is gonna be one of the shows that I just don't think I have a lot of complaints about. Um, I yeah, I really love everything. Like the writing, the direction, the CGI was fun. Um, the music was incredible, all that stuff. So, Sam, what are your general thoughts of Moon Knight?
And thus the Holy Trinity is complete. You, of
Mm-hmm.
course, understand what I'm referring to, because what I'm referring to is the, in my opinion, undeniably best 3 MCU TV shows. That, of course, being Hawkeye, Loki, and now Moon Knight. Yeah, I don't have many criticisms either. As this was airing week to week, it's certainly probably the most like engaged and excited to see the next episode that I'd been for a show. Probably since WandaVision. Like Loki was great, and I was thoroughly enraptured in that when it was airing. But
Mm-hmm.
there was a, because WandaVision was the very first show and we didn't really know what to expect. There was sort of like a bated breath expectation, and so many things could happen. And I think Moon Knight accomplished that, but not in the sense of us not knowing what a Marvel show looks like, but just in terms of the narrative and thematic content, where it is breaking new ground in terms of how even just specific sections of a story are told, how characters are portrayed. Obviously, it's opening up a slightly different sector within the MCU,
Mm-hmm.
a side of the world that we haven't seen yet, or as much of, I guess. Technically, Thor is a god, so like I guess in some ways we've seen gods before, but yeah, no, I think it's remarkable. I will say I do think the first half of the show is better than the second, because I think that as much as, again, most of the hardcore community, we kind of knew what to expect going in. The whole like Steve and Mark swap out all the time, taking each other's place, that kind of thing. But I think the show did a really good job, even if you knew that context. Obviously, without the context, it's great. But even with the context going in, I think they did a really good and unique and interesting job in depicting that, and making it still interesting to watch. And I think that once, I'm not saying the second half is bad by any means, but I think that once there is less conflict directly between Stephen and Mark, and a little more cohabitation where they kind of like understand and know about each other's existence, I think that the character interplay was, for me, it was very nitpicky, just slightly more captivating in the first half, where it was all kind of up in the air and nobody really knew what was going on. It felt like nobody's feet was touching the ground. It was just things were happening, and Stephen was out of his depth over and over and over again in situations that he had no idea how he got into. And there was less of that in the second half. Obviously, there is the eventual introduction of the third alter, I guess is how you would frame it, which brings it back a little bit in the final episode. But yeah, the surface level, I think it is wonderful. I think, again, I've said it before a few times, but the fact that Marvel have performed to such a degree that we are at a stage where we get a show like this about a character called Moon Knight, and DC can't get a Superman film off the ground. It does. I've said it a couple of times for different projects. You know, I think I said it with No Way Home as well, that the fact that they can culminate all of this stuff together and make it so special. But now, particularly in this era when this show premiered, they're not scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of characters, but they're diving more into like the real obscure characters now. And I love that. I think that's great. And you know, if it gives results like this, then more for it. But yeah, I do. It does make me appreciate what the MCU has done to tell these kind of stories and execute them pretty much flawlessly, in my opinion. And the competition is just still unable to even make it out of the starting gate, and we're so far down the track now with these characters and these stories. Yeah, I think it's remarkable. I think it's great.
Okay. Well, I will say Moon Knight is a little bit of a cooler name than Iron Man, but you know.
I can't say I disagree.
At least we have cool names now.
Yeah.
Okay. First and foremost, I wanted to talk about the soundtrack. Beyond some of the movie soundtracks, specifically like let's see, well, that's not true. I really love Loki's soundtrack. I really love Black Panther and Shang-Chi. I think those are like the ones that like stick out in my mind. I loved the soundtrack for this TV show. I need to actually like go through it to figure out like which tracks, you know, I would actually have in like my music. But overall, I really, really enjoyed this soundtrack. I think that they have a really unique sound, obviously throwing in like the Middle Eastern music, since it is Egyptian. Yeah, I don't think I have like too much to say like as far as like analyzing the soundtrack, because I actually need to like listen to it, but I really did enjoy it. I will say I really liked the licensed music as well, especially like with the repetition. I don't even know the name of the song, but they repeat one song consistently, and I think that was really like an interesting way to kind of create that sense of falling back into the pattern of like, oh, like I'm waking up, I'm in the same spot kind of thing.
Oh, the Man Without Love.
Oh, is that the name of the song? Okay.
Yeah, the Every Night Away. Yeah, that one. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not stepping on you. Will you finish with your point?
No, yeah, I'm good. Go.
Yeah, okay. I wholeheartedly agree. I still think that for me personally, and you know what I'm like, I listen to a lot of this music relatively regularly. I will say in the original score, there are a couple of standout things, but most of it to me is relatively generic. But I think it's the fact that the accents, and by accents, I don't mean vocal accents, I mean musical accents, and the instruments they use on many tracks, but specifically just a few, make it in my head think that the score is, this sounds worse than I mean it, better than it actually is. So like I still definitely regard this score and the music that they use as upper echelon. But I think it's because there are just a few real standout excellent tracks where they sort of like, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. And yeah, I agree. Licensed music, obviously, most of it is what I would assume is in Egyptian. I don't know what they're saying, but
They speak Arabic. So
okay, right.
it's just a particular dialect of Arabic.
Thank you for correcting me.
Okay.
There are a few specific licensed tracks, which again, I haven't got a clue what they're singing about, but I love the tracks so much that they are pretty routinely in my rotation. I looked it up, like the one that I always listen to is Enter by DJ Kaboo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I think again, it that track is, I don't know, there's something about the musicality and the rhythm of it and the instruments that they're using. It's like, you know, it just tickles my brain. I'm a real like sound guy. Like music is very powerful to me, and if the rhythm and everything really hits,
oh yeah,
then it will elevate like to an all-timer for me. Not that song in particular is an all-timer, but it's certainly one I think about pretty often, and I think it's now synonymous with the show to me. Like if I think of the show, I think of that song, and if I hear that song, I'll think of the show.
What's interesting is it's actually not part of like the soundtrack, like the actual like album.
No, but it's just one of the, I think if I remember correctly, it only actually plays over the intro and then the credits of one of the episodes in the middle. But it just captivated me, you know, as soon as I heard it playing over the Marvel Studios logo as it came in. Just sort of hooked on my brain, and I've never really been able to let go. So, but no, I think music-wise, it is certainly very distinct, which I think is what you were getting at with the Black Panther and Loki and everything. Like, those have very distinct sounds to them.
Yeah.
And I think that helps, for the most part, it to sort of stand above the rest of the noise, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I think that like a lot of it is like when they are like when Marvel is like consciously and purposefully pulling like music and sound from other cultures, like it obviously creates a sound that's like unique in terms of like it's not just like American like soundtrack, whatever, right? So I think that that's definitely part of it. For Loki specifically, it has to be the theremin. Like, like throwing in that instrument is like, yeah. One of my friends was like talking. She's like, I really want to learn the theremin, and I was like, okay, do it. But yeah, I am going to. I have like a, what is it called? An intake playlist for my music. It's not just like soundtrack music; it's for all music. But it's so I don't like mess up my my library when I like add music. So I'm adding all of this stuff to my intake so I can actually like listen and know which songs, you know. So that'll be a fun time. Just out of curiosity, do you have like for like the actual OST, like that main album, do you have any tracks that you wanted to shout out?
I mean, I really like the main theme. I think I can't remember. It's just called Moonlight, but I do really like it. I think it's quite operatic is the wrong word, but it's got that sort of like choral thing going on, which feels very. Not that has any association with like Middle Eastern society really in comparison to any other part of the world. But like, again, I think that coupled with the music lends into the sort of like godly, ethereal nature, which is obviously relatively pertinent to the character. So that I can't think of any off the top of my head of names on the track, on the original score itself, that stand out. If I have a look, I might be able to find some, but
that's okay. Sometimes you just have that.
Just have a peruse.
They have some fun track names as well, so worth just looking over the track list anyways. Okay, well, yay for good music. Yeah. Music is one of my favorite things. We've gone over this before. Music is definitely like one of my favorite things, like when I'm watching TV or like movies. And it's like a real bummer that Marvel has dropped the ball in so many of their like movies and TV shows. So it's like really exciting when the soundtrack is good. Maybe that's why they did it. They were like, we need to create a sense of excitement.
Maybe.
For some of these. No, I think it's just that, like, I think that people really underestimate how much like a soundtrack can transform a show. Okay, next. Bechdel test. I don't think this passes. By I think I mean I know. So that's a bummer. Actually, does it count when Layla talks with the one goddess? It might.
I think it might. And also, I can't remember exactly what they talked about, but she was talking with like that old lady who did a passport. She was probably talking mostly about Mark. But
I don't think that character... Well, no. I mean, I think that character has a name, but I don't think we know the name.
That's true. That's true.
So it has to be a named character.
That's true.
But I still think that it counts for like the hippo goddess.
Yes.
Because I don't think they were talking about Mark.
Yeah.
And I think that they were just talking about being a vessel. So I think that it just squeaks by at the very end of the last episode. All right, we'll give it brownie points for that one scene. So now we have some like characters, themes, storyline, through line, all of that stuff. Every Grain of Sand, Bob Dylan, 1981. Interesting. Sorry, I have like a bunch of like articles because I want to like because it feels like this show has a lot of Easter eggs in it and a lot of like imagery that I caught on. I know for sure some of it, but there has to be too much for me to catch all of it, right? Like, for example, like at the very beginning of the show, there's only one fish, and then there's like two fish in the end of the show because there's two people theoretically inhabiting the body that know of each other. Oh, before I forget, how many times does the third altar show up that we know of in the show? Is it just the two?
Yeah, when they stabbed the dude who was running away, and then in the final fight, I think, right?
Yeah, so there's the one time on the rooftop.
Yeah, where he stabs like, the younger kid or whatever.
And then we see them at the very, very end.
Yeah, and
like, then in the final fight. So 3 times?
Yeah, technically, yeah.
Okay, interesting. I know there's a lot going on, but I feel like I don't know if it's like a denial thing. Denial is really for in Egypt. Anyways. I don't know if it's like a denial thing, but like since you already know that you have like more than one personality in the same body, if they're both like, hey, that wasn't me, and the other guy's like, hey, that wasn't me, like nobody's like, hey, red flag, like, you know. I don't know. I think I would be like a little bit like, because they like, especially when it happens the second time, because it between the first time and the second time, there can't have been that much time that passed. And I know there's a lot of stuff that happens, but I still think that you'd remember, like, hey, this isn't the first time that this has happened. But I mean, to be fair, they are also kind of used to being disoriented. But
Yeah, it's all pretty crazy. And they like, I guess they could have also just assumed it was like Khonshu taking direct control, maybe, or something. You know? Like, I still think that you're right, that logically you would think that would cause concern between the two of them, but I think with how frenetic and probably confusing everything is for them already, they, you know, there's a giant bird skeleton fighting a crocodile over there by the pyramid, so they probably don't think about it too much, which is to their own detriment, because clearly there's something going on that they don't know about.
Yeah. Have you read the Moon Knight comics?
I've read 2. What is there a follow-up question?
Well, I was just like curious because like we only know of like, well, I guess we technically know of like the 3 altars now. That doesn't mean that there's not more, kind of thing. So I was just wondering, like, one, if like the 3rd altar is mentioned in the comics that you've read, and 2, if there's more than the 3. Just because I was curious.
I mean, there's probably stories where there are other altars, but it's almost always the 3 that it's Mark, Stephen, or it's Jake. So again, going into the show, we were like, well, even before the sort of blackouts when neither of them knew what was going on, we were like, well, it makes logical sense that at some point Jake's going to show up. And he did. And I'm of two minds, because I think that it's cool, especially with the structure and the narrative structure of the show, to keep that elusive part. It keeps some of the mystery. It keeps Stephen and Mark a little confused. It means that theoretically, you know, Khonshu has a loophole to keep them as his vessel, you know, even though both Mark and Stephen wanted to get rid of Khonshu. So it's a good plot device to use, but I do feel at the same time, as a viewer, maybe a little bit shortchanged that we didn't get at least a little bit of actually seeing what Jake is like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's not that great of a guy.
Well, no. And in the comics, he's traditionally the unhinged one, shall we say. Very different portrayal, though, because I mean, obviously it's Oscar Isaac, so they sort of would. It's nice that they sort of altered it a little bit to make it fit who he is a little more. But Jake Lockley traditionally is like a proper London cab driver, which obviously in essence is kind of the same because he's driving a limousine, but very clearly like Hispanic. You know, he speaks Spanish. In the scene that we see him driving, where he pulls out the gun. So yeah, and I'm fighting within myself, because I'm rest assured that inevitably we're going to see Moon Knight again, and by that logic, it would then dictate that it would make sense that at some point we'll see Jake properly. But it is also frustrating that we didn't we only really got like a tiny peppering of an indication of what that third character is like, which I think maybe they didn't need to hold back and stop us from seeing what happened in the final fight. Maybe they didn't. It worked fine, but I think that there is a version of that scene that could have worked perfectly fine if we did, even if we didn't know exactly what was going on whilst it was happening. And then halfway through this big fight where he's just wrecking people and destroying everything, we're like, oh, he's kind of going a bit far there. And then you sort of start to process and you think, oh, maybe it's the other one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think Moon Knight does a really good job of very easily disorienting you, obviously on purpose, because the character is disoriented and doesn't understand what's going on a lot of the time. So I think that, like you said, it does end up working for the final fight because you're like, whoa, what happened? And I think that in a lot of shows, having the final fight being kind of basically almost skipped over, not completely, but the climax of that fight being kind of skipped over would be really disappointing. But in this case, it's so weird that it works,
Yeah,
and
it's a nice subversion of expectation.
It really is. It really, really is. This is another one where I specifically the first episode. I would love reading the script for the first episode because it's I mean, obviously, I had very little context for Moon Knight, but I knew enough that it was kind of a multiple personality, kind of thing. So I figured that that's what was happening, but the way that they completely disorient you, it's it's almost gives you whiplash in that first episode, and not in a bad way, right? It's just so completely what is going on? And I'm sure the character feels like that. I can't even imagine just waking up and people are shooting at you and you're like, what is going on?
You're driving a truck backwards
Yeah.
downhill.
Oh my God. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine.
And also from just a purely selfish, stupid fanboy thing. Also, just interested in seeing what happens to the suit when it's Jake.
Oh,
because Stephen,
good job.
Mr. Knight, the dapper suit, is just chef's kiss. Love it, love it, love it, love it. I also really, really, really like Mark's version of the suit, the sort of more traditional Moon Knight suit. I mean, Mr. Knight is also in the comics, but to see what Jake's version of the suit looks like, I'm like, I want to see it. I want to see what he looks. I'm sure it's not going to look the same. It's got to look different somehow.
Yeah. Do you think that they're going to have Moon Knight participate in another project before they do any kind of season 2, if they even do a season 2?
I would expect that is just going to be the case. Yes.
So in which case, the only person that could participate is Jake. Unless there's some sort of leaps in logic, which they're probably doing.
They'll just do some off-screen storytelling and maybe reason it away. You
really don't think that we're going to get another season, or
at
least soon.
I don't think so. So there was 100% real conversation that a second season was going to happen. Because this was received pretty well, generally, certainly in comparison to other shows that were surrounding it. And Oscar Isaac himself, I think, said at one point it was happening. So did the director of the first season. But I think their slate of projects is so big now and they've got so much to get through, so many different characters to use. And also on top of that, they are now reining it back on the number of TV shows that they're making. And even the number of films that they're releasing in a given year, to focus on quality over quantity. Now, I don't think, again, I'm not saying, I think that if any show is going to get a second season, I think Moon Knight certainly warrants it in the same way that Loki warranted it. But I feel they might think that Moon Knight, as great as it is, doesn't quite have the mass appeal that Loki as a character does. And by that nature, by that merit, they might kind of just fast track him into being in part of some ensemble film, which isn't what I prefer. But, you know, if that means that I don't have to go 5 more years without seeing Moon Knight, then I'll take that option, you know?
Yeah.
Because I don't want him to be a character, not saying that he would ever be, that he would be a character that is kind of just left by the wayside and disappeared. So, yeah, it's rough. Because I also don't think it's off the cards, but I certainly over the past year and a half have kind of removed myself from being excited about the prospect of a second season. If it is finally like officially announced and like slated, I will be very excited, obviously. But it's only been speculation and hearsay. And even though, again, both Oscar and the directors suggested pretty heavily that it was happening, that was like 2 years ago and we've heard nothing. So not looking great for a second season.
Bummer.
Yeah.
I will say I cannot wait for like that moment of like Moon Knight interacting with like one of the other heroes, and like that, like the switching between like I think that that's going to be a really funny moment where they're like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah. I mean, you haven't seen them yet, but like just because it's so fresh on the brain, like not saying that this would really make logical sense right off the bat, but like Moon Knight interacting with Deadpool, like with the amount of jokes and sort of meta humor and, you know, breaking the fourth wall that Deadpool does. Seeing that, you know, Deadpool making the jokes and the switching in Moon Knight, I think that is, I mean, like you say, you could put it next to pretty much any character and have the switching happen. You could put him next to Spider-Man and Tom Holland's going to be like, what the hell is going on? You know?
Yeah.
I think I think that's the frustrating thing, is that there is inherently, more so than with many other characters, so much potential with Moon Knight.
Yeah.
That we're just sort of waiting for them to capitalize on, and we're worried that right now they might not ever find the time to capitalize on it, because they think that there are more popular things. Alas.
Okay. Okay, what else do I want to go here? There's a couple things that I want to talk about. I'm trying to keep track of all of them here. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to bring up, just because this came up, so this is from an article from Games Radar, where one of the, let's see who it is, the costume designer, Megan Kasperlik, explained about like Jake's outfit, which is really cool. She said on the collar, on the reverse side of the collar, they took the Mayans and found some basic symbols, like almost zodiac symbols, of Oscar Isaac's birthday, his brother's birthday, the first issue of Moon Knight, the first time we see Jake Lockley, the first time we see Mr. Knight, Moon Knight in this, all of that. They added the zodiac symbols into the collar that's like flipped up in his outfit, and like 3D printed it on there. And you only see it for like literally a second, but they said Oscar knew it was there.
Nice.
Which is kind of cool, huh?
Nice.
Costume design people are cool. Source set design people. So I thought that was fun.
I'm
There's
also going to say, sorry,
Mhm.
just before
No,
we
you're
move
good.
past the costume thing, easily by a country mile, Moon Knight has the coolest suit up procedure
Oh, his
ever.
Sailor Moon transformation.
Yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
hate that you frame it like that. That's horrific. Don't ever do that again.
Is it not
But
a Sailor Moon? It's a magical girl
stop
transformation.
it. Stop it. Don't ruin it.
Magical girls are like some of my favorite stuff.
Shh. Shh. No, we will not taint this with that filth. Okay. Uh, you're not wrong, but I can't. The just again, because it's so distinct from anything else we've seen. Because even like Doctor Strange with his cape and stuff, there is like logic that you can understand with that. That the cape itself is sentient and therefore can sort of like warp itself however it sees fit. But the fact that just like the wraps just manifest practically out of thin air onto him, and then the glowing eyes,
Yeah.
I think that is it's just elegant, you know. But I think there is a what's the word? There's almost like a horror to it because it's almost just like he's being consumed by it in a way that other people's suit ups don't really have. In the way that, like, you know, when someone is being mummified and being wrapped in all of these things, it's sort of like you're sealing away that person and they are then hidden beneath a thing. Whereas I don't really ever contextualize a suit up for anybody else. Like, I don't think about Tony putting on a suit of armor as Tony being, you know, like suppressed and then it's Iron Man, you know? Whereas with Moon Knight, it's sort of like I feel like it's either Steven or it's Mark or Jake, obviously. And almost against his will, these things just start happening to him. And then he's not in the driver's seat anymore, really.
Yeah.
Or certainly doesn't have both hands on the wheel. And I think that is a little bit terrifying.
Isn't that fun that they do like a literal driver's seat thing?
Yeah.
And they're both technically in the driver's seat, but only one can drive at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I found something, you guys. Okay. Just to prove my theory. For the audio listeners, Sam. For the audio listeners, can you describe what's on the screen?
No. No.
Oh, you guys, it's just Moon Knight posed as Sailor Moon with like a skirt. I just wanted to see if other people were like, you know what, this kind of does remind me of Sailor Moon, and it's not a unique opinion. I mean, I've never had an original idea, but still. I will say this is also super cool. I just will show one more thing. There's this person that did a Moon Knight Sailor Moon cosplay, which is incredible. Incredible. If you haven't seen it, it's on Reddit. So, real cool.
Mm.
Do you think there's an edit where it's like the Sailor Moon music of like her transforming over his transformation?
I am not going to engage or endorse this behavior.
I'm like literally crying from laughing. I lost my mouse. There we go. So there's like a bunch of other Like, I wish I had time to like sit and like go through all of the like different Easter eggs that they have like hidden in this show, because they did a bunch of stuff like in the fish tank. The boat that you see later that they ride is like in the fish tank and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Like, so they have like a bunch of like these little small Easter eggs in this show, and I'm sure they do it for a lot of the TV shows, especially. But man, I just really like. I wish I had like the time and the energy to like sit and like absorb like all of that, you know?
Mhm.
Um, do you have any fun facts that you're like, I'd love to share?
None that really stand out.
Mm.
Um,
One that I think is super interesting for me is I don't know if I'm saying this character's name, Duchamp, is a contact on Mark's phone. That's like a missed call.
hmm.
It's like one of the only ones that's not Layla.
Yeah, yeah.
Apparently, it's a comic character we might get introduced to later, which I thought was an interesting.
Yeah, I mean that those sort of things happen all the time with these shows. That
Mm,
kind of allusion to whether it's names on apartment mailboxes or like you say, names in phone books or whatever. There's always you more often than not you will see like license plates of cars be references to specific issues of comics that correlate to a given situation that is currently unfolding in a given
mm,
scene, or like as comparable an event as possible is being referenced. So you'll see in like most of the Spider-Man films, like ASM 2067 or something, which is Amazing Spider-Man issue 20, 1967, that kind of thing. But yeah, no, there are certainly plenty of little nods and references throughout this show and every other, which
mm.
are good for those that know, but don't really detract or add anything for people that aren't not paying attention, but don't have the contextual knowledge to understand that any given thing in any given scene could actually be a little nod and a wink.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to talk about? I think we do have to talk about Layla. I
Mm-hmm.
think that she was a I really enjoyed her character. I think that she was a really awesome addition to the show. I think that her confusion, like, I can't imagine being married to someone and not knowing that they have an altar.
Hmm.
That feels like that would be like a weird realization, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But she seems to like both of them, so that's good. Um, what did I want to say about Layla? I one loved the like, oh, so there's an Egyptian hero. Like, that was a really cool moment. Got a little excited about that one. Um, I will say they didn't bring up her hero name. Do you know the name of the hero by any chance?
Uh, wh- hmm. I mean, I do. Yes. Um, it's it's technically taking a character that uh, isn't so. Layla, as far as I am aware, is a original character that she hasn't appeared in comics that I know of. But she has taken the sort of the mantle, or what's it called? Yeah, just the mantle of a different hero. So it's technically she's called the Scarlet Scarab.
Okay. And that's usually like a different character then.
Yes, I know of two iterations of Scarlet Scarab. They are both certainly like of Middle Eastern descent. Like they're certainly in that region of the world where those characters came from, but they're both male. So I think they sort of gender bent and then just took the moniker of the character and attached it to Layla, which I have absolutely no problem with whatsoever.
Yeah. Also, like her costume is really, really cool. I really loved the costume, especially like that moment where like the wings like that was cool. That was really cool. Enjoyed that.
Yeah. Also, slightly superficial thing to say, but I'm going to call it out that I think that May Kalamaui is a gorgeous actress.
She is.
Just wanted to say it.
Stunning. Are we adding
her to your
simp list?
For sure, 100%, 100%. I think, like you'll understand where I'm going with this. This is going to sound worse than I mean it, but when you are, unfortunately, it is a reality in media and in consumerism and capitalism, that when you are trying to not push diversity or inclusion or whatever, but just to implement it effectively, and you want it to go over as well as possible, it helps if your actress or actor or whoever is attractive, is charismatic, is clearly enjoying the role, is up for anything within reason, obviously, and all of that. I think it has to be a whole package. And what the point I'm getting at is that I'm so glad that May achieves that, because it is so important to have this kind of representation. And I would have hated, and you can get, I don't have to tell you that there was certainly some people, certain sectors of the internet, which will always push against people. Is like, oh, she's Egyptian, Palestinian, sort of, I don't want to have anything to do with that, all that nonsense. They'll just reject it because it is not a straight white person from America, I'm so relieved that pretty much everyone universally clicked with her, both as an actress and as a character, because from all I've seen in like behind the scenes and everything, May was just like super up for it, just went for it, was having the time of her life. And the sort of gentle, caring nature that she put into Layla, I think, is emblematic of who she is as a person. So when I'm making she's a very attractive woman comment, I'm not trying to be just superficial and objectifying. I mean that I think it is extremely important, not necessarily all the time, because people come in all different shapes and sizes, but I'm glad that she wasn't a thing that this show was attacked for. Because I think that it could have gone a number of different ways very badly. Wrongly so, obviously. But yeah, for her to have sort of just nailed it and knocked it out of the park, and to have looked drop dead gorgeous doing it, is just perfect.
Okay, love that. I did not know that she was Palestinian Egyptian. Makes sense, given the way that Palestinians are everywhere but Palestine. But anyways, okay, so your simplest right now is Yelena and Layla. Do you want to put Layla above or below Yelena?
No. I mean, like, I can't imagine there's going to be anything that dethrones Yelena.
Okay.
And again, that's mainly just due to the fact that it's Florence Pugh. Like, I love Yelena as a character. I think she is the best character we've gotten since Endgame. But yeah, it's close. Don't get me wrong, it's close. Because I think that, Yelena has the sort of like brash abrasiveness, and then Layla has the sweet, kind, caring side. So they're like yin and yang. They balance each other out.
Okay, makes sense to me. Okay, while we're talking about simplists, I obviously have to add to mine.
obviously.
The tired sound of your voice. Okay, listen, I am a huge fan of Oscar Isaac for this role that he played, small role in this movie that nobody's heard about.
We don't need to rehash this.
And I'm definitely not wearing a shirt for a particular reason. Yeah, so I'm going to be adding Mark / Steven / Jake / Miguel to my simplest.
No, scratch that last one. No.
What one? Jake, because we haven't seen.
No.
I love Oscar Isaac. Again, I think he did like an incredible job. Like his acting in this is so crazy, pun intended, because like obviously, but like it's so cool. He did such an incredible job. And also like I was very confused by the British accent, obviously. And then of course like you finally get like a little bit of Mark's voice, and I was like, oh, there's Miguel's voice. And I'm nothing if not a simp for Miguel. So I'm going to be adding him to spot number 5. I reordered it just a tiny bit. Right now my list is Shang-Chi, Drig, Loki, Okoye, and then Mark / Steven / Jake / Miguel. And then Doctor Strange, and then Bucky from What If, long hair version only. And then Heimdall, and then Captain America, but only from Infinity War. That's my updated simplest, you guys.
Cool.
Sam, you gotta beef up your list a little.
No.
I'm glad that we had this conversation. This was an important conversation. I can't wait to make the thumbnail for this episode. Okay, what else do we want to talk about? Okay. Man, I will say I really love that they pulled from like Egyptian mythology. I think that Egyptian mythology is definitely one of the most interesting, in my opinion, mythology like that we are like aware of in modern times. I think that there's a lot of interesting things that you could do with that, especially like if they do end up doing a season 2, because a lot of the vessels or avatars or whatever are like now dead. So I think that there's a lot of interesting things that you could do with that. So I'm kind of looking forward to that if they do that, please. Is there anything else that I want to talk about for this? I did want to talk about the psych ward. I really enjoyed that the way that they wrote that, and the way that you flip in between like the psych ward and technically also the psych ward, but like not. I loved the moment where he's like, Steven? Like, that was so cute. I was like, oh, they're friends. Loved that moment, by the way. And like the whole like where it turns it on its head at the end, where Steven is like, oh, you know what? Like, I think you might be mistaken. Like, I think you're in the wrong spot, kind of thing. That was so cool. And then for that to like they fall through and then they like wake up on the bed.
Yeah.
Such a cool moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree.
I think that there was a moment in kind of like almost like a pendulum swing thing where I'm like, you know what? I actually kind of am not vibing with this like psych ward. I'm kind of sick of it. Like I'm not enjoying it. And then they brought it back around. I was like, okay, yeah, that was cool. So yeah, because I think that like it's pretty easy to get confused, and I like kind of knew, I was like, there's no way that they're going to like do this whole thing and be like, oh, it was all a dream kind of thing, right? Like Like that just doesn't make sense for like the character and what they were trying to portray as the show. But I also was like kind of worried that they would try and do that. And I think that that would have not I think I know that would have ruined the show for me.
Mm.
Of like trying to suggest like this is all fake. They're just crazy, which you know they are, but like I you know don't think it's fake. So
Yeah, I mean, it is the psych ward thing is a very heavy nod to probably one of the more famous runs in the comics, where it was the whole like dissociative identity disorder thing is a relatively new concept for Moon Knight. Traditionally, that kind of mental health aspect hasn't been attached to the character.
really interesting.
And it was sort of thanks to a run early on, well, not early on, but like past the inception of the character, that kind of played with the idea that, you know, Moon Knight is Marvel's Batman. What happens if it is a guy who, for lack of a more sensitive term, is just a little bit crazy and thinks he's going out and fighting crime, and maybe is, but he isn't some superhuman powered by an Egyptian god. You know, he's just suffering from delusion. And that in that run, he was at least partly in a psych ward. It's never been, to my knowledge, like a whole. It's never been this was all a dream thing. It's always been like he's now perceiving that he's in a psych ward, but in reality he is actually still doing things, but it's his mind playing tricks on him and all of that, or it's some villain manipulating his mind or whatever. But yeah, I almost wish there was a little bit more of the psych ward stuff peppered throughout. It would have taken so much more planning, but I think that even like, you haven't seen Fight Club, but in Fight Club, I'm not going to spoil it just in case you're never going to watch it, but in
That's
Fight Club,
joke.
there is a reveal near the end of the film, and throughout the film, leading up to that point, alongside the just regular footage that you're watching throughout the film, there is split second, like singular frame, interlaced footage of something else. And that something else very clearly, or not very clearly, but like alludes to and gives indication of the eventual reveal. And I think that there is something that they could have done interesting with the earlier episodes prior to the psych ward bit that maybe did, again, not suggest that he was in a psych ward the entire time, but more just that there is that, even just to begin with early on, tiny little fracturing in his identity and who he is and where he thinks he is and what he's doing. Where not necessarily you see a flash of the psych ward for a split second, a singular frame, and then it cuts back to the scene. It could be that, but even if it's like he's in the museum in the opening and, you know, the little girl that he's speaking to asks something and he goes to write down something on a post-it note or something, and instead of a pen he like has a needle in his hand, you know, and then it cuts down and then it's a pen again. Do you know what I mean? I think there's just little things like that where it's like messing with reality, where you in the same way with any kind of unreliable narrator, you question whether what you're seeing is correct, and obviously that is what this show does. Exactly what is the show presenting to you? How do others perceive it, as opposed to how Mark or Stephen or whoever perceives reality? There is breadth for that, but that obviously would require so much more forethought. So I'm not surprised they didn't do it. I'm just sort of like, oh, would have been awesome if they did.
Yeah, maybe for season
because it would
2.
have made re-watching the show so much more enjoyable than it already is.
Yeah, I think it would still be fun, like for me at least, to go back and look at all of the reflections in like the first / the first part of the second episode. I think that like because you don't realize for a while that that's like how he like kind of connects to his altar is like through the mirror, right? Because until you actually know, like they don't talk about like the reflection. So I kind of wonder if there's like something going on in the reflections. Maybe not, but it would be cool.
I think it's probably more just like a visual storytelling device, where like in a mirror you're literally talking to yourself, and that inherently then draws out the other altar. But no, I certainly think that there is something that could have been. I mean, obviously they did do stuff with mirrors, but beyond just the narrative storytelling trope, I think there could have been an interesting contextual thing there where maybe, Stephen or Mark or whoever was kind of like averse to seeing their reflection because they either couldn't, it's reckoning with yourself, but also it could literally be a trigger that then causes the altar to switch out.
Yeah.
But hey, again, nitpicking.
I think that it would be interesting if they had kind of leaned further into like the reflection being like actually a trigger versus just like a reminder thing. The reason I say that is because then you would have to have figured out what the trigger is for Jake because it clearly isn't a reflection. And I think that would be interesting. But
yeah, because you would assume from like the final fight that Jake might be like a break glass in case of emergency type trigger, right? Where it's like Mark was about to be killed, and it's like, hit that button, smash the glass, and you just unleash hell. It's like, last resort. But then that isn't really the case with the very first appearance because they already had the upper hand for what we understood, unless of course something happened off screen mid switching in that pursuit of the young kid that maybe meant that Mark or Steven didn't have the upper hand.
Yeah. But
again, that's could be done intentionally to leave it vague as to, well, why did Jake appear in the first place, and two, why did Jake decide to kill someone who was clearly not a threat that we know as an audience. I think it's nice that they repeal the usual sort of dramatic irony that we have as an audience member, the sort of privileged perspective we have of knowing all of the context, whereas the characters on screen don't.
Yeah.
And when it's a really interesting dynamic that it's flipped, where even though we've seen practically nothing of Jake, technically, in a narrative sense, for all we understand, that the alters are still conscious. Like they aren't in control, but they probably still fundamentally, to some extent, know what's happening. And certainly Jake seems to almost come out whenever he wants to. So he has to be kind of omnipresent in the background.
Yeah. I think for Jake, I think he's probably watching at all times.
Yeah. And that means Jake knows more than we do as the audience, which is quite cool.
Yeah. It is really, really cool. I wish they had done a little bit more with Jake. Or just give us a second season. I'm okay with that.
Maybe.
I will say, where I thought they were going with like the altar, is I thought that the brother's name was going to be Stephen. Because sometimes that happens with people with dissociative identity disorder, where they like kind of like somebody passes away and they kind of take on their name and personality as part of themselves. And I thought that that would be what happened, but it wasn't.
No.
I think that would have been interesting, but
yeah.
Okay, one thing I do want to bring up, just because I think it's pertinent for me specifically, and this is like, I think that this, I don't think you'll care, but I think it's still fun. So there is a character in My Hero Academia, which is of course like the hero anime. And I'm like really interested to know, like, I think he's known to be partially based off of Deadpool, but I think he also has to be partially based off of Moon Knight, based off of like the way that his character uh acts. His costume is particularly like the head-ish area is like similar to Mr. Knight. Um versus like the actual Moon Knight thing, but basically like he is this character that has like two alters that are like aware of each other, and they like talk at the same time. Almost they like flip in between each other, like between sentences and stuff like that. And he's a really interesting villain in My Hero Academia world, but like I just would really love to know, like, is this character like based off of Moon Knight at all? Not that you would have the information, but I just wanted to bring it up in case anybody out there actually knew. I did a quick Google search and I couldn't confirm. But yeah, he's got this really interesting thing where he feels like he's being split apart at all times, and so like he keeps himself like in like a zipped up suit to like kind of like hold his body together, even though his alter is like obviously still there. So it's an interesting character. So if you ever end up watching My Hero Academia, I think you'll be like Moon Knight. But every party has a pooper. Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in this show that you feel like we didn't cover, like character-wise, story-wise, through-line stuff, themes?
People criticized it, but I think it's probably to the show's benefit that it doesn't really connect to anything outside of itself. It's a relatively self-contained thing. There's no real sort of, crossover cameos. There's no post-credit allusion to where it's going in terms of like a wider narrative sense. It just sort of exists on its own, which is not super rare, but rare enough that it probably deserves merit. Because I think that it's all the better that this show sort of stands on its own 2 feet. And that it's as good as it is without having to rely on being like, oh, I know that person. Mm-hmm. We don't have to talk about him that much. I do want to shout out Ethan Hawke as the bad guy. I think he said that he was inspired by David Koresh, who, I don't know if people know, but he was the cult leader in the Waco siege.
Okay, yeah. I mean, no, I don't know him personally, but yeah.
No, not personally, obviously. But like, yeah, so like a cult leader who is truly, like, many would argue, steadfast in their beliefs and not being facetious or manipulative intentionally. It's just that they have these beliefs that they hold, and they hold them so strongly and truly that people are sort of like automatically inclined to become enamored with their teachings as well. And I think that Ethan Hawke does a very good job with that as well. Like he exudes that kind of like, he exudes the machismo and charisma, but remains incredibly composed and calm, and I think that is something that you see a lot in manipulative people just in general, but leaders in positions of power. You know, they try to portray this hard and steady image of themselves regardless of what's going on around them, and people look for that comfort through the stability that they are giving off. It's a very different villain to anything we've had before, because he doesn't really present a physical threat. It's far more a it's not an emotional threat. It's not really a mental threat all that much. It's not really a physical threat overly. It's almost just like purely a philosophical one, which is something you don't really see in villains ever. So yeah, just wanted to shout him out.
Yeah, I think he did an incredible job as the villain, and I can definitely, now that you're kind of pointing it out, definitely see like that cult leader vibes. I think that is commonly like kind of what you see with like that self-assured, confident attitude. Like it's crazy. Yeah. No. Speaking from not full cult experience, but partial cult experience. You know, religion's crazy, but I think he did a really good job. And I think he was a really compelling villain as well. Like, it wasn't just like a throwaway addition. It felt like he really mattered to the story, which is always a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of things I could talk about, all the visuals and the interesting CGI things that they did, you know, shifting back the night sky. It's just, I think that they did so many cool, interesting things throughout the show. Went a little bit overboard in the final episode with the whole like kaiju fight, but you know, it is what it is. It's fine. It was cool, but yeah, there was sort of, it's kind of jumping the shark a little bit, you know, going a little bit overboard. Don't think we need to go that far, but regardless, I think that the only thing I'd reiterate, because you talked about it mostly, but the fact that I am so appreciative. It's getting a bit inside baseball. I'm so appreciative that Oscar Isaac was up for doing this, because he's had a pretty rough go with franchise stuff. You know, obviously he's done well with Dune, and he has done well with the Spider-Verse films. But outside of that, he has been technically in Marvel films before, just not MCU. He did one of the X-Men films.
I think I do that
several years ago, which was disastrous. Didn't like really threaten to tank his career, but nobody liked his portrayal, nobody liked the character, nobody liked the film, so it just crashed and burned. And then alongside that, sort of simultaneously, he was in the most recent Star Wars trilogy of films, and most people for one reason or another sort of decide to crap all over those films. They appreciate his performance, but they're like, he didn't really do anything in 3 films, and that's the script's fault, obviously, not his. And again, both of those, technically, I mean, X-Men wasn't Disney, but it was Marvel, and then Star Wars is obviously Disney. So for him to then be like, at the time he was like, I'm never going back to Star Wars. If they want to do another story with my character, I'm not going to do it. So for him, despite all of that, all of the turmoil, to agree to sign up to the MCU at a time with Moon Knight where it wasn't on the super high of Endgame, it was shortly thereafter, and for him to give his all and knock it out of the park. I'm amazed he did it, and I'm so grateful that he did. So I think that is, like you've been talking about throughout the episode, just sort of reiterating that he does such a good job.
Yeah.
I can't see anybody else in the role. I'm sure other people probably could do something similar, but the innate charm that Oscar Isaac has, and how he decided to depict all three characters is very, very impressive.
He's so handsome. Ugh.
Just get him in one of these films or something soon. I need to see him again, please.
Yeah, please. I want to stare at Oscar Isaac more, please.
Because the worst tragedy of them all, Brie, is that this was never official, but Avengers 5, which is coming out early 2026, right, was meant to be out next year, but obviously all the delays and strikes and COVID is all pushed everything back, right? The original director for Avengers 5, not attached anymore, but the original director said that on the top of his, not the top, but like on the top part of the billing for his version of Avengers 5 would have been Moon Knight, because he said it was one of his favorite characters. He thinks it's right for exploration, and that not explicitly that Moon Knight would have become an Avenger, but Moon Knight would have just been in the film and had a very substantial role, and that is likely not going to be the case anymore. So who knows when we're going to see Moon Knight next. I sincerely hope it's sooner than I probably think it's going to be.
Yeah, I hope so as well. I think, yeah. I do, not to reiterate too much, but I really think that what was super interesting for me, so we have obviously Oscar Isaac playing 3 different characters, right? Which are all wildly different.
Mm-hmm.
We mostly just see the 2. When we're seeing the 2, he's kind of like it's between different cuts, or at least would appear to be different cuts, right? So he has like time to kind of adjust and flip between the characters, which was already an incredible performance. And then, like, at the end of the film, he's like within like sentences, like just switching between the 2 characters. And I can't imagine that that's easy to do.
No.
And so, like, I'm just so blown away by his acting in this. Like, it's just, like, he looks, I'm sure it's a lot of costume and makeup and stuff as well, but it has to be a huge chunk of just his acting skills. He doesn't even really look like himself or like act like himself at all when he's Steven. It's so cool. He's so good. I'm obsessed. I want to watch him in more stuff now. But okay, I'm looking at his credits. One of his credits is from Into the Spider-Verse as interesting person number 1. I love that. Anyways, I just need to watch Across the Spider-Verse again, as you all may have suspected. Okay. Well, I don't want to cut you off, but it did sound like you were kind of finished with your thought.
Mm-hmm.
So we're good to go and head out. Okay. Well, next we have ranking. We got to decide where we're throwing this on the ranking. This is definitely going to be high for me. Let's see. I'm trying to fight off the simping to like actually assess the show for like how much I enjoyed the show. Let's put it here. I might need to like redo my list at some point. Okay, so for me, I'm going to put it below Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and above Hawkeye Season 1. So for me, that is spot number 8.
Okay.
I kind of am tempted to put it higher, but I think that like some of the other stuff that's higher does like a little bit more like emotional things. I don't know. I'm tempted. I may end up moving it up higher, but I'll leave it there for now. Where are you going to throw yours?
I am putting this just below. Can
I'm so tempted to interrupt you and be like, can I guess? Pull a Taylor. Oh, Taylor cracks me up.
I'm going to put this just below Winter Soldier.
Okay, so that's spot number 9 for you.
Yes.
Moon Knight Season 1. And just above, just in case anybody's curious, Spider-Man No Way Home.
Correct.
Spot number 9, okay. You've low-key too far down your list, just saying.
That's quite high for me.
That's really low. Also, shout out to Kyle for saying Moon Knight is a horrible show and Eternals is a horrible movie. You suck, Kyle.
Yeah, who knew? The weeb has bad taste.
Hey! Hey.
It's almost like there could have been something that told you that ahead of time. Oh yeah, maybe it's the fact that all he consumes is anime.
That's not all he consumes. Do you know how much Genshin he plays?
I mean, that's just like virtual anime.
I mean, no, it's really not. It's a video game. But he's played it every day since launch.
Yeah, with weeby waifu characters, yeah. Which is what anime has done.
You know you've watched anime too. Just checking.
I'm not suggesting I haven't. I'm just saying.
I'm just making sure. I'm just making sure you remember.
So I'm well aware.
Okay. Sam, I have a question for you.
No.
What are we watching next for the people?
We are doing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Okay. Yay. Well, that's what we'll be watching next, you guys, is Multiverse. I don't know if you know. Do you know what the next, like, I don't know if it's like after Multiverse or whatever. Do you know what the next TV show is?
Yeah.
Would it be weird if I asked you what the TV show is so I could try and watch it? Not like ahead of time, but like just so I have more time to watch it?
Miss Marvel.
Okay. Is that something that like it will throw everything off if I like watch it out of order and I should just wait and binge it in 1 week, or it's fine if I just slowly watch it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, cool. I was just thinking about that. I was like, since there's a movie next, like maybe I can like sneak in some like TV time, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not binging 6 episodes in a day. I mean, I didn't this time, but that's usually what ends up happening. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. A special shout out to our current patrons. We have Alpaca Tom, Fabulous Brianna, Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, Lindsay, Nikolai at Night, Cypher Primus, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, Lillian, Mimi J, David Hotright, Dave Harp, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Lee Navarro, Silicanet, Ellery Woods Parker III, and Shelby Massey, and Chad. Thank you so much to our 2 new patrons and everybody, of course, on this list. We love you all. Thank you so much to these 2 new patrons. With these 2 new people being added, we will be doing an anime podcast post show, at least 1 per month, since the people wanted it. Sam, where can people find you?
Anywhere and everywhere at Sam Heaney, Heaney.
Okay, you can find me at Fabulous Brianna. That's FabulistBreanna. You can find Save the Game Media at Save the Game Media most places except for Twitter/X, which is Save Game Media, because it's, character limits. If you want to be a patron too, you can. There's a free trial. You can join for $1 and get like the post shows, early access to episodes, all that fun stuff. Patreon.com/SaveTheGameMedia. Come hang out. We also have a Discord. You should hang out there too. We would really love to have you. I think that's everything. So I hope you guys have a good 2 weeks. We will see you when we have watched Doctor Strange Multiverse, because Sam hasn't seen it yet.